Happy to hear from you, and I'm glad you're my host, sweetheart. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. Happy to see you all, you kind, dear people. We're going to do this little talk together of Buddha Tara, try and talk about what she represents, how we can use these practices in our lives. Sometimes I think in the West, we're a bit cynical about the Buddhas. It sounds like, we're a bit cynical, not quite confident, not quite sure what it really means, So let's really talk about that, the logic of the Buddhas and what Tara means in particular. And we'll talk about, of course, I'll have to present the three principal aspects of the path as an introduction. That's always the prerequisite before we talk about these tantric deities. But then we'll talk about Tara and we'll do the practice. So we start, I think, with we have a little prayers there, do we, Paula? Or not for this evening? We don't have a prayer for this evening? Can't hear you, darling. So I'll just sing a little prayer. It's like a public talk tonight, isn't it? So we'll do it a very general. Okay, we'll do a general talk tonight. Then we'll be more serious in the weekend. Okay, so we'll just start with a general motivation. We're thinking we're going to be here together for this evening, and I'm going to chat away. You're going to ask questions, and we're going to take some tools from this information to help to do two things. One, develop our own unbelievable potential. If we realize, I think, how much potential we have according to the Buddha, we'd be very moved and we'd be very encouraged, and we wouldn't give up so easily, So not only can we develop our own potential, on the basis of this, we'll be able to be of benefit to others. This is the point, So we'll think that as I sing the little prayer. Sangye charang choke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyap suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupa shok sangye charang choke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyap suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupa shok Sangye charang soke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drumpa shok. All right. As a general introduction, then let's talk about the meaning of these Buddhas. On the one hand, in the modern world, since Tibetan Buddhism came to the West, started becoming evident to the West, but even earlier than that, when some Westerners had discovered already the Tibet, the people were always totally fascinated by the art of Tibet, which of course means it's religious art. There's no art in Tibet that isn't related to Buddhism. I mean, there may be these days modern artists, but it's all related to Buddhism, utterly linked to it. And so, of course, it's the art we know about, so we're so familiar with, like all the mandalas, all these amazing statues, these wrathful deities, these peaceful ones. And this has always, for some reason, fascinated us. It's very interesting. And people who even aren't religious really love Tibetan art. So from the spiritual point of view, from the point of view of a practitioner, how do we see all this art? So, and how do we understand it as practice? That's the point. Sometimes we really mystify it. Well, the bottom line for being a Buddhist, all the way from here to Buddhahood, whatever method you use, whether it's the most basic level, whether the middle, whether the more advanced level, whether the Bodhisattva path, or whether the Vajrayana, the most advanced level, the job is the goal is the same. It's to use these methods on the one hand to become familiar with what is going on in our mind, and then learning to distinguish between the neurotic parts of our mind and the valid, virtuous, positive, optimistic parts, and then to learn to lessen the neurotic ones and grow the goodness. I mean, essentially, that all the way to Buddhahood, that is the job of being a Buddhist. Being a Buddhist doesn't mean saying mantra. Being Buddhist doesn't being prostrations. Being a Buddhist doesn't mean wearing these robes, having a bald head and that kind of thing. There's a story, I think, about Atisha, this famous Indian scholar yogi who spent the last many years of his life in Tibet, back in the 11th century, I think. There's some story, I think it was him, where one student came up to him and said, "Oh, I've just done some circumambulations." And then Atisha said, "I'm very happy about that, but I hope you've done your practice. Hope you've practiced Dharma," meaning, practice Dharma. And he said, oh, Oh, all right then. Well, then he went away and he came back and he said, I did my recitation of mantras. And our teacher said, well, I'm very happy about that, but I hope you practice Dharma. And he kept coming back with these different things he was doing. But the bottom line is the actual job, and this is a way to help us understand how you use these Buddhas in practice. The bottom line from here all the way to the accomplishment of the development, the perfection of this mind of ours, because Buddha is actually a psychologist, a brilliant, unbelievable, ingenious, brilliant psychologist, and that is not meant to be a joke. Buddha has, the word Buddha tells us everything. The etymology of the word Buddha, I quote this a lot, but it's so tasty. The word Buddha, Bud in Sanskrit, the first syllable, or the Tibetan equivalent, sang gye, Bud, sang, implies the total eradication from our mind, our consciousness, of all ego, all fears, all attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, low self-esteem. These words are beyond simple, but we can't hear it because it sounds so insane. You go to any neuroscientist and ask to please give me methods to get rid of all anger, jealousy, they'll think you're insane. Well, we tried that in the 1930s, you'll say, and that was called a lobotomy, and it didn't work because we're discussing the brain. But Buddha's not discussing a brain. He mightn't argue that we've got one, but that's not his expertise. Buddha's expertise is the actual cognitive, the cognitive process itself, this intensely personal, subjective, cognitive process known as our mind, which he doesn't describe as physical. So he has found from his own experience, direct experience, it's not revelation, it's not belief, it's not supposition, it's not speculation. He didn't have a vision of it. He didn't have a dream. It's his direct experience. He has found that these neuroses, these delusions, this ego are not at the core of our being. They're not at the core of our being. They're not intrinsic to us. They're not integral. And he has found, therefore, that you can rid the mind of them. So, of course, it doesn't make sense to us because we don't have the same view as Buddha in the way we analyze the mind. But not only that, he says, we can also, implies, we can also develop to perfection everything else in our mind: love, kindness, wisdom, compassion, generosity, joy. So this is the basis of all Buddhist, this implies Buddhist practice. This implies the methodology. It's absolutely evident from that statement. And that's the end result. So clearly, then, the job is we need to learn skills that enable us to distinguish between the delusions and the virtues. It's very simple, very clear, not a difficult concept, but enormously difficult, because right now, as far as we're concerned, and this is our culture, this is our neuroscience, this is our psychology, and this is the way we feel, that all this stuff is in a big soup in here. It's a big soup. We don't distinguish between these two. We figure that a bit of anger, bit of attachment, bit of jealousy, bit of love, bit of kindness, bit of intelligence, you're a normal person. We give equal status to all of this. There's no view in our modern psychology that would suggest that some of it is not at the core of our being and can be rid of. This is a very weird idea, but this is what Buddha is saying. So this tells us everything. So the actual job from this second to becoming a Buddha, the actual heart job is the job of lessening delusions, identifying them first, distinguishing them from virtues, and lessening those and growing the virtues. That, I promise, is the job from here to Buddhahood. So everything else we do supports that job. That's its function, to support that job. So if we get that already, things fall into place, So if we enter into June, so before we okay, we'll discuss that more in the weekend. But the very first stages of practice in Buddhism, which is all to do with even your body and speech, forget about your mind. The first level is to control the servants of your mind, and the servants, which are part of your mind, your delusion. So you control the body and the speech, which are the parts of us that will carry out the wishes of attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, depression, low self-esteem, etc. You harness their energy first. That's junior school, entry level, grade 1 practice, already sublime. So that isn't directly working on the mind, but it prepares us, because you've got to control the servants of the mind. So now we get to the next level of practice. Now we start the actual job of getting some focus, learning contemplation, meditation, getting some focus, and just doing the job of being our own therapist, as Lama Yeshe puts it, distinguishing the neuroses from the virtues. And I mean minute by minute, by second, because they're always going along there. And theoretically, it's not a complicated job, but it's the hardest job on the planet, because we don't want to look inside. We'd rather look outside. We blame the outside for our happiness, and we blame the outside for our suffering. So that's where we look. And so we've got to like reverse the energy of a bomb in order to want to look inside and to want to identify these different parts of our mind, and then do the work of lessening the neuroses and growing the goodness. That's the hard job, all the way from here to Buddhahood. And everything you do, all your prostrations and living in vows and all your mantras and all your water bowls and all your years of retreat and all your this and your that, they all are methods that support that. And if they don't, they're a load of rubbish, so don't do them. If there's a single syllable, comma, full stop, sentence, practice, method in Buddhism that doesn't help you lessen delusions and grow virtues, it is not valid. And that's a valid statement. So then where on earth do these esoteric, seemingly bizarre practices of seeing yourself as some green lady with 2 hands, or some, even more shockingly, some dude, male or female, with 74 arms and scare the life out of you if you met them in person? What on earth is the function of all of this? It seems so utterly kind of cosmic to us, you know. Well, it's exactly the same. It's the benefit is to help you with your mind. No other reason. There's not a single other reason. But so basically therefore what you could say is all the way from Buddhism, from junior school to university to postgraduate, which is Vajrayana, which is Tantra, and that's where Tara belongs. This type of practice is the Vajrayana, the most advanced. It's exactly the same. It's a method to help you lessen your delusions and grow your goodness. That's it. It's super clear. But how is it that? Because it seems so esoteric to us, seems so strange. Even saying a mantra, reciting a Sanskrit mantra sounds so esoteric to us, you know. So one of the first things to really understand, which will help us understand why doing these practices are psychological, is that Buddha's view, and this is karma, you learn it in junior school, Buddha's view is that every millisecond of what we think, and therefore certainly do and say, but what we think, that what goes on in our mind, every millisecond of what goes on in our mind counts. It matters. It sows seeds. So in a simple little practice in the beginning is you control your speech. You don't badmouth that person. You're using your mind to control your speech. The next level, you control the mind that drives that speech. And the next level, you add compassion to the mix, which is the bodhisattva path. And the next level, you know, these most advanced practices, you could, for example, visualize Tara and say her mantra. So the purpose is exactly the same. So why would for example, a mantra, saying weird syllables, weird words in a foreign language help you? Well, because your mind, everything that happens in your mind. So if you simply say Om Mani Padme Hum, which is the Sanskrit word syllables that refer the sound manifestation of the Buddha of compassion. So when you see a picture of, we'll talk about Tara then. When you see a picture of this nice green lady looking gorgeous, you know, with lovely naked breasts and gorgeous looking in the prime of her youth, all the Buddhas in Tantra are the prime of their youth, meant to make you blissful. And she's like this drawing, you draw her, and she's got these gorgeous breasts, and she's got these gorgeous hands, she's holding this, she's looking this, her eyes are this, her hair's this. It's like a visual language. Every tiny thing in that drawing, every tiny thing in that painting has a function, and altogether has a meaning. It's not just, oh, I'm going to draw a nice green lady, you know, be creative. Every letter in a word serves the function of spelling that word so it conveys the meaning to you. The word is just a symbol. The same with Tara, she's a symbol, but she represents. So what she represents, you know, as different qualities that we are trying to cultivate. So in this sense, it's truly psychology. So her mantra, the sound, Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha, these Sanskrit syllables just sound words coming out of your mouth. But what drives words is the mind, isn't it? The mind is thinking Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha, and then your mouth says it. Well, if you buy into the meaning of Tara, we'll talk about that. Let's say Chenrezig is compassion, then you say those syllables, what do you think you're doing to your mind? You're programming your mind with compassion. It's hardly rocket science. But because in our culture, we don't take the mind seriously. We think, oh, I can think what I'd like. We think we can think what we'd like as long as no one knows, because we don't think the mind matters. That's not a joke. We don't think the mind plays a role. This is very shocking to say that. Lama Zopa said the vast majority of all humans on the planet have absolutely no idea that what goes on in their mind plays any role at all in their lives. And what he means by that, not that they don't know that they're angry or that they're loving or that they're intelligent. No, they know that. But we don't think that that's what plays the role. We think it's the cake that is the one that is the problem. It's the boyfriend, it's the thing, it's the weather, it's what's out there that is the cause of happiness and suffering. What goes on in my mind is that's just incidental. It's like the result of something. It doesn't have a role. This is very odd to think, I mean, you're angry, but what do you mean? Of course I'm angry. It's his fault. Look. So it's the thing that is playing the role, not the mind. It is very extraordinary to hear this. We should think about it. But the Buddha is saying the exact opposite. Whatever goes on in the mind is is the source of my own happiness and suffering, programs my mind with those thoughts and those tendencies, and then causes my body and speech to do certain things. My body and speech don't have their own little brain in my fingertips, My hand will reach out and take something, which is called stealing, not because my hand wants to, it's because my mind wants to. We don't even notice half the time, My hand will reach out and give $20 to a poor person because my mind wants to give $20 to a poor person. My hand doesn't do it itself. So it's obvious the body and the speech are the servants of the mind. So everything that goes on in the mind plays a role, sows seeds in the mind, programs my mind, without exception. And it directly relates to what I do with my body and speech. But of course, because we're not conscious of our mind, we don't notice the relationship, Or we don't think that what goes on in the mind has any effect on what we do. I remember one time reading in my New York Times, years ago on my iPad, I saw a story of a woman in Brooklyn who got into her husband's computer and discovered that he was part of a cannibal site and they were preparing to kill and eat her. Well, she was quite surprised and she rang the FBI, not just the police, the FBI. So at his trial, his lawyers, their position, their defense was, but that's only in their mind. That doesn't mean they're going to do it. So meaning what goes on in your mind doesn't matter. I mean, you've got to think that's pretty bizarre, but that's how we think in our culture. And we think we're intelligent. We think as long as no one knows what's in my mind, then it doesn't matter because we're into being caught. We need to be seen or not be seen. We think that's what determines things. It's very extraordinary. So whatever goes on in our mind, therefore, whatever we do in Buddhism is to help our mind. And if it doesn't, it's useless. So Tara then represents the three essential qualities of a Buddha: infinite power, infinite wisdom, infinite compassion. A way of summarizing. So Tara represents the power. So power meaning action, success, courage, confidence, cut through the obstacles, make things happen. We all need that badly, whether we're girls or boys is not relevant, We all need that, but it happens to be depicted as this female energy, green, which is action energy. So the drawing of Tara, she represents that. It's like I said, the picture is like a language. It's a visual language representing that. But it's like a foreign language too. If you look at a foreign language, I've got some Sanskrit over here, Tibetan words on my wall. I don't speak Tibetan, and I still haven't all these years. I can't recognize the letters. I've never learned Tibetan. So I know it's a meaning. I know it's on Mani Padme Hum, but I can't see it. So the same with Tara. It's not evident. You just see a pretty green lady with nice breasts and pretty silken clothes on. You would never think, that means power, success. You have to buy into that meaning. That's perfectly reasonable. On Mani Padme Hum doesn't mean anything to me until I learn it. It's the same. So if you buy into that meaning, and then you say her mantra, which is the sound representation of that energy, and you visualize that one, and then you even visualize yourself as that one, then what else would you become but that one? It's pretty obvious. If you visualize playing tennis all day, no one thinks you're living in a fantasy land. It's part of your process of learning tennis. You think of what Serena told you to do, you visualize doing it, and then you go and do it. That's how you learn tennis. It starts with your mind. You imagine doing it. You imagine that backhand, and then you go and do it. Well, if you imagine me, Chen raising, you imagine compassion, you say the mantra of compassion, guess what you're programming your mind with? Compassion. How marvelous. It's completely logical psychology. It's completely logical psychology. It's not just fantasy. We think if you visualize the Buddha, it's kind of fantasy, it's daydreaming. Well, we do that all day. Yeah, I agree. But it still has a meaning. You're sitting there fantasizing about your boyfriend all day. Look what you're doing. You're just developing attachment. You think about anger all day, you're developing anger. Here, if you think of Tara and you buy into that meaning and you say the mantra and you do the visualization, we'll do the little practice, then you're programming your mind with that. How marvelous. How marvelous. It shows it's dependent arising, It's dependent arising. You visualize that green lady, you buy into the fact that she represents power, success, confidence, courage. You know you need that. You visualize that, you imagine that, you become that. They're marvelous practices. It's marvelous psychology. It's Lama Yeshe from the very beginning, when he first met Westerners. Tantra is necessarily more advanced. And in the classic Tibetan monastic university system, you'll go to practice, every little girl or, little nun or monk, if you're at your monastery, you'll go into these and you'll memorize all the practices, but you won't learn it properly until much later. But Lama Yeshe, for some reason, from the very beginning, and this is where we need to talk about Tantra, what it means psychologically, Lama felt that from the very beginning, us modern people, that were Westerners at the time only, all these modern hippies coming to Kathmandu looking for drugs and enlightenment, whatever we thought they were the same, God knows, but that's the thought. So Lama somehow felt, by seeing modern minds with this world of incredible attachment, that we could understand very well the psychology of Tantra. And he would teach it straight away in a very down-to-earth way, He would teach these practices immediately. And I always know that when we did the practice and he would lead a meditation in these practices, you always felt it kind of uplifted you, it uplifted you. Identifying with this marvelous being, identifying with yourself being that energy, that's very uplifting. That's like the best. It really is us positive psychology. Tantra really is the ultimate of positive psychology. In fact, the way they refer to these practices is, if you're visualizing Tara, for example, which is the end result, your Buddhahood, and it's she's a mirror image of what you can become, and you're identifying with that, you're buying into that meaning. They say it's like bringing your end result, your Buddhahood, into the present. It's super powerful, and it really is positive psychology. I mean, this is coming from the Indians well before the Buddha, these types of approaches, brilliant psychology. But of course, they didn't use the word psychology then. It's Greek. Buddha didn't speak Greek, but it's psychology. What else is it? If it's the mind, it's psychology, for goodness sake. There's no other meaning. There's no other esoteric hidden meaning to it. It's all psychology. I mean, there's more sophisticated practices, and it's kind of incredibly interesting. As Lama Yeshe says, Tantra is very technical, but it's very brilliant. But it's a method, these super brilliant methods to help us become who we really are, to become our true nature, to become a Buddha. The potential is already here. So there's these three essential qualities, and one is compassion, and that's represented usually by Chenrezig, compassionate-eyed one. One is wisdom, and that's usually depicted by Manjushri, Manju, gentle voice, holding a sword above his head with fire cutting through ignorance, And then Tara is power, action, get things done. And that's often depicted as female. Quick, sharp, no nonsense, She's sometimes depicted as slightly wrathful, her eyes slightly wide open, not peaceful aspect. So, okay. Yeah, Lama from the very beginning, he somehow felt, and he would teach quite advanced things, but because he was so skillful in a very down-to-earth way. And because the essence of Tantra, okay, there's different levels of practice. The very first level of practice is like ethics. Mind your own business, back off, don't harm, don't kill, don't steal, don't jump on the wrong partner. You harness your body, harness your speech, stop making trouble. Why? Because whatever you think and do and say will produce the person you become. And hey, baby, I don't want more suffering. So you stop causing it. But the overall approach is one of ethics, good, solid ethics. Don't harm sentient beings. But again, the way to put it is you're controlling the servants of your crazy mind. Now, because you've harnessed that, you go to the next level. That's like junior school. Now you go to high school, the middle scope of the teachings in the Lamrim. And here you start to unpack and unravel the mind. You become your own therapist. This is where you really start to be a Buddhist. General ethics, the first level of practice, ethics is shared by good communists, by good anybody. Nothing unique to the Buddha. But the next level of practice, being your own therapist, unpacking and unraveling your own mind, that approach is absolutely unique to the Buddha. Distinguishing between the neuroses and the virtues. And then once you've distinguished, unpacking and unraveling these conceptual stories and reconfiguring these conceptual stories, reprogramming your mind, quite literally, writing new scripts in your mind. That's being a Buddhist. Then you get to the compassion wing, and now you add bodhicitta to the mix. Compassion, this amazing aspiration to want to help others, to make this paradigm shift in your mind where others become your concern. So with the wisdom wing and the compassion wing growing, we now move into Tantra, the most advanced level. As Ramayesh says, it's highly technical. So there, another way of putting it all, in the very first level of practice, if throughout the whole way of presenting Buddhism, you could argue that attachment is the main problem, all the way. Attachment is the problem. So the very first level, you control the servants of attachment, your body and speech. Then you get to high school, you start to control the attachment. So in the beginning, if you use the analogy of, let's say, a chocolate cake, the first level of practice, you leave the chocolate cake on the plate. Best, control yourself. Next level, you start to unpack the attachment and start to understand it. And now you know what's driving. Then you get to the compassion wing. You could argue you can even have a piece of cake now because your compassion overrides your attachment, no problem. And now you get to Tantra, the most sophisticated level, because you've unpacked your mind, you understand it intimately well, you've harnessed your body, speech, and mind, you really know what you're doing, you've got some compassion, you're beginning to understand emptiness, and now you can learn to actually work with the poison. And Lama Yeshe would always say, us modern people having so much attachment, we're able to understand how you can utilize poison on the path, which is how they talk about Tantra. So I've mentioned really implicitly, I haven't explicitly said it, but I've basically mentioned these three principles of the path that are often presented before we talk about Tantra. And one is to get some renunciation, which we've talked about already, by controlling our body, speech, and mind. Get some bodhicitta, which is this aspiration to benefit others, driven by compassion. And then finally, some wisdom, driven by this, some wisdom that has some sense of a confidence that there's no intrinsic me in here that's cause of all our pain, Having some semblance of understanding of these three, this prepares us to go to the most advanced level, to take empowerment into these practices, So then we look at, so who is Tara? And we say, well, who is Tara? Where did she live? Is that a picture of a real person? We're going to be confused, We see statues of Shakyamuni Buddha, like behind me. And we know even though it's a Thai statue, he looks like a Thai as well. But we know, hang on, excuse me, I have to do something. You have to forgive me. You'll have to forgive me for 30 seconds. I'm so sorry. This is something urgent.
For a few moments.
Now I'm back. No, I'll tell you what it is. I've got this thing I have fixing, and this kind fellow in Florida at 10 o'clock at night just answered a text. I had to say thank you to him. That was all. That's all. I had to say thank you to him. I did. Thank you. Okay, so who is Tara? Who is Chenrezig? If you look at all these Buddhas, there must be hundreds of them, thousands. And we think, who are these people? Where do they live? And you hear these nice stories about how Tara was born out of a tear of Chenrezig, something to do with Amitabha, all these stories, right? And how she vowed she'd always stay and she'd get enlightened as a female, this kind of story. But basically, it's a bit like this, okay? You've got different ways that a Buddha mind manifests to help sentient beings. If you're a Buddha, basically you don't need bodies. You're finished. You've done the job. You're out of here, babe. You're finished. You're out of here. You've done the job. You don't need a body. You're enlightened. But out of your incredible compassion, you're going to manifest in bodies to be a benefit to sentient beings. And one kind is a human one. Oh, he's so sweet. He keeps texting me. Charlie in Florida. So one kind is this one here, the human being. So Shakyamuni Buddha, if you were living in India 2,500 years ago, the place was crawling with sadhus, I promise. He still keep going. No worries, he says. Thank you. Charlie, he's so kind. So he, sorry, not he. Yeah, Shakyamuni Buddha. He was 2,500 years ago, and if you were walking around India, you could not have told the difference between him and all the other sadhus. He didn't walk around with a lump on his head like you see in the statues. You wouldn't have gone, oh look, there's Buddha. They all look the same. So he was a Hindu among all these amazing genius yogis back then. As Dalai Lama says, it was these amazing Indians more than 3,000 years ago who were the ones who began the investigation into the nature of self. We thought it was Freud, didn't we? No. So he was a part of them, and he went as far as he could go in that system, and then he diverged in his own direction, directly in relationship to this point about the true nature of self. So anyway, even at the time, you'd have to have checked up on him. He said, don't believe a single word I'm telling you. Check up on me. So you check up on the credentials, check up on his students, check up on his words. And then if you think he's valid, he'd become your guru, your teacher, your mentor. You choose him, but he doesn't appear evident to you. But then there's another form the Buddha mind manifests in, and this is really in the Vajrayana, which is only really flourishing in Tibet and is still flourishing among Tibetans. In spite of the terrible things that have happened in Tibet, it's still alive outside of Tibet, but it's only really in Tibetan Buddhism that the Vajrayana is existent and extant and fully developed still. So the Buddha in Vajrayana manifests at a subtler level, in a subtle light body. This is where it gets esoteric for us. And the only way to understand this is to understand the nature of mind, which we learn way back in junior school and high school. We learn about the mind, how the mind is not physical, how it's not the handiwork of a creator, how it's not the handiwork of mummy and daddy, how it's not the function of the brain. We've got a brain, no problem. But we learn earlier about the mind and how it's not physical and how eventually, and it has this Buddha nature. So when you've accomplished this Buddhahood, your mind pervades the universe. I mean, this all, of course it sounds abstract to us, but this is the Buddhist view, it's been around for several thousand years. The mind pervades the universe. It's not physical, unmanifest, all-knowing, all-clear, all-compassionate, all-wise. So out of compassion, these minds, all the beings who've become Buddha, manifest in different bodies to help us. So this is the human body. So of course, Shakyamuni Buddha is dead, right? He's not here anymore. So we need a human body in front of us now. It's exactly the same function. There's no difference. He is the Buddha. He is the Buddha of this time. He's called the Supreme Nirmanakaya. Nirmanakaya means the emanation body. He's the boss of this time of Buddhism. But there's countless beings since him who have become Buddhas in their human form. So they're also the Guru. They're the Buddha for us. So right now in this life, we might find somebody, let's say the Dalai Lama, whom we've checked up on and we've considered he's valid. And so he will be the Buddha for us in exactly the same way that Shakyamuni Buddha was the Buddha for us back then. No difference. But there's this subtler form of Buddha, which is only in the Bodhisattva path and only in the Vajrayana. And that's where all these so-called deities, thousands of them. But they're all under 5 groups. If you want a little kind of family tree, you've got the actual Buddha mind, known as the Dharmakaya in Sanskrit, unmanifest mind. Then under there, you've got the Rupakaya, which is the form body, the body. Then under that, you've got 2. One is the kind of one we can see here, which is called emanation body. And the other one is the more esoteric one, the subtle light body, that's from the Vajrayana in the Bodhisattva path, that only the great Arya Bodhisattvas, those who realized emptiness, the great meditators, Bodhisattva meditators, they can access this Buddha. They can access Buddha at a subtle level in their meditation. So that aspect is known as the enjoyment body. So and there are 5 of these, 5 families. They're called about 5 Buddha families. Amitabha, Akshobhya, these 5. And each of these, and this is the key point in Vajrayana, the more sophisticated psychological view in Vajrayana, they each represent the purified aspect of a particular delusion. They each represent a purified aspect of a particular delusion. So Amitabha, for example, is purified attachment. Akshobhya is purified anger. Each like that. And there are 5 families. Then under those 5 are all the other thousands and thousands of Buddhas. So they're all psychology. Tara is in the Amitabha family. You know, Chenrezig is in the Amitabha family. And you've got different kinds of Buddhas. There are some Buddhas in this system that are representation, like I said, of purified delusions. Some are, so for example, Chenrezig is a manifestation of compassion, peaceful aspect. But you've got a wrathful aspect of compassion of Chenrezig. One is called Hayagriva, and he's a wrathful aspect of compassion. So there's all these different approaches psychologically, the different approaches, the different transformed aspects of different levels of mind. It's actually quite sophisticated psychology. It's very fascinating. But as I said, we wouldn't think it. We see this green lady and wonder how that's psychology. They all represent a particular either level of mind you're trying to accomplish, like compassion or wisdom, or they represent a purified aspect of a delusion, you know. So it's marvelous. There's so many. So Tantra is just more sophisticated psychologically. It's always psychology. If it's not about the mind, it's a load of rubbish, you know. It's important to remember that. So Tara and then there's different levels in Tantra where some you can't do unless you've received an empowerment. You've got to be qualified. But many of these practices like Tara, Chenrezig, and these, you know, it's good to get an empowerment. You must, but you can do them without an empowerment. And they're the ones that are most popular. You know, the mantras and the use of these in practices. So there's different ways you'd use these practices. One is the fundamental one is you doing these practices in order to identify with that energy, in order to develop that in yourself. So you can become Tara, become Chenrezig, become these Buddhas, you know, which is eventually what happens by identifying with those qualities, by practicing every day, training like Serena, by looking at a picture of Serena, by replicating Serena's, you know, backhand and forehand, you become your own Serena. It's hardly rocket science. It's exactly like that with the Buddhas. So these Buddhas then, like I said, who was Tara? Where did she live? Is she one person? We might say about him, yes, he lived back 2,500 years ago. You see a picture of the Dalai Lama, you can place him in space and time. But these days, these pictures are a bit different. It's a bit different. So, okay. You could say there are thousands of Taras. That whoever, you know, the Buddha you like to identify with, let's say a Tara suits your nature, then you identify with Tara, she's your practice, she's your main practice, then you practice imagining Tara in front of you and you become your own Tara. So that Tara, then who is she? Well, you know, it's like what she is an idealized on paper or a statue or a painting. She's an idealized representation of the particular qualities that she represents. So it's a bit like you decide you want an ideal tennis player and you draw an ideal tennis player, a perfect tennis player, perfect muscles, perfect biceps, exactly the right fist, the right wrist, the right holding, the legs are right. Everything is perfect. That's the picture of Tara. That's the picture, that's the statue of Tara. So how you make that real for you is you put Serena's face on it. So Serena is your tennis player. You know, your Lama, your guru, your mentor, your human person in this life now, your Serena, you put that face on Tara. So that is the guru. As the Bog Rinpoche says, if the guru isn't Tara, then who is? So if Serena isn't your tennis player, then what's the picture mean? The picture is just a generic image. It's a generic image of a tennis player, but you make it personal. You put Serena's face on it. So if Serena isn't the tennis player equals Buddha, who is? So that's how, it's not just some abstract person on a piece of paper. This green lady, where did she live? In India or Australia? What is she? You know, you can't track her back as one person. Like I said, there are these nice stories, but that's much more powerful, I think. It's real. It makes it real for you. So when you know who your personal, you've chosen Serena, she's your one. You've seen the picture of ideal tennis players. You've checked them out. You've read about the qualities of a tennis player. And then you've got to find yours. So you put Serena's face on that tennis player. She becomes your tennis player. And then you become your Serena. That's how to understand these deities. I don't know if that helps or not. You know, I'm chatting away here. I've got no idea if it's relevant to any of you, but once you ask me some questions, then I will find out if I'm talking a load of rubbish or there's something useful here. So please talk to me. But I've got to get my drink of hot water. I'm very unprepared tonight. I'm so sorry. My water's over there, but I haven't got several arms. I've got to go. Think of some questions. Come on. What you prefer? Come on, talk to me, people. Ask me some questions. Anybody?
Robina, I love what you said. Venerable Robina, it's Kimberly again.
Yes.
I just loved what you said about a bomb in reversal when talking.
Okay, good, yes.
Love it. I love it. And I just wanted to say that's a great analogy.
Good.
And,
it's like that, isn't it? It's hard.
Yeah, but it just hit home out of the park.
I'm happy, Kimberly. How are you, sweetheart? You doing well?
I'm good. I have a minor spinal cord injury, so it's not really that minor, but it means I try my best to sit up, and then I'm gonna have to do this until I get more energy. I get back up.
Good, darling.
So I have a poster of Tara behind me, and if at any point it would help to put that on the screen, I can do that. And I'm gonna be quiet now and let other people speak. So thank you very much. I can't hear you.
Who else is there? Who else, darling? Thank you, Kimberly. Thanks, sweetheart. Who else has got questions? Anna, what are you doing in the middle of the night? Anna's in Liverpool. Come on, Anna. Look, it's 3 in the morning in Liverpool. Good Lord.
Hello, Venerable.
Who's this?
It's Anna.
Oh, darling, talk to me. You are okay?
Hello, hello.
You doing well?
Yes, I feel like I am. Green Tara seems to be extremely powerful with me. I mean, the 180-degree turn in the mind from fear, hell into almost a bliss. You know, I'm so joyful, and I'm experiencing, you know, these sufferings as the manure, you know, to nourish me and help me. I'm so lucky, Robina. I really am. But I'm trying to stay grounded. Yes, there's a lot of stuff going on.
That's right. Good, and I'm so happy to hear it, sweetheart.
Thank you so much. Absolutely miraculous. Thank you.
Anybody else got questions? Nothing else? Not a single thing? Nothing? Okay.
Venerable?
Yes, talk to me.
Good evening. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I'm experiencing some, you know, some physical ailments recently.
I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. I'm wondering, is it possible to utilize the Tara practice while going through this physical suffering?
You know, it's interesting. All these different Buddhas, in the end, they're different manifestations of the same enlightened mind, but they're different shapes and colors and sizes and functions. So, you know, you can sort of, it's like medicines. You can select certain Buddhas for different practices. So in general, let's say if you've got illnesses, someone might do the medicine Buddha practice. But if you've got a connection with Tara and you have confidence in the energy of Tara, then absolutely, sweetheart, you do the one that is most beneficial. And this is a part that I think is where we get a bit esoteric and we get a bit cynical, especially if we haven't been brought up. Well, even if we have been brought up with a religion, I mean, have you got a background in religion? Were you brought up with religions?
Yes, actually, my parents were big hippies, and they had a guru in India and raised me as a vegetarian my whole life. And I have a, you know, background in Eastern philosophy, but I'm a...
Okay, so it's more easy for you then. You weren't brought up as a Christian, for example. That's interesting. No, I know. So it's the thing is that it takes time for us, I think, when we so you understand well, but it takes time for us, I think, in our culture to understand what a Buddha means. We see pictures. You know, it's like if you sort of, I don't know, if you see pictures, you just think it's a picture. We think it's just symbolic. I'm not talking to you necessarily, Susan. It's in general, we think that, you know. Then you think of praying to a Buddha. That kind of weird for us. What do you mean praying? Because one of our problems is the only way we think of prayer is to a creator. So as soon as you don't have a creator, and of course Buddhism doesn't assert a creator, then we think, you know, well, why would you pray? So we've got to understand what prayer is. Prayer really, you could almost say prayer is aspiration. There's different kinds of prayers we do. We do some prayers where you make aspirations, quite literally, may this happen, may all beings be happy, may I become enlightened, may I benefit others. They're like positive thoughts. Literally, it's positive thinking. You're making aspirations. It's marvelous. Some are directly related to asking the Buddhas to help. So that part gets very confusing for people. We think, but if you haven't got a creator, why would you ask a Buddha to help? But I mean, then why not? It's their job. The person who becomes a Buddha, their mind is totally developed. They've rid the mind of delusions. They've perfected all the virtues. And they're driven by compassion. They're driven by compassion. When you're a Buddha, there is only this infinite empathy with others and no longer a separate sense of self. There's only this infinite empathy with others and this infinite wish only to help others. We've got to understand that. That's what drives a Buddha. So then if anybody, it's sort of like if you become the best doctor on the, if Susan becomes the best doctor on the planet, she's driven by her compassion. She only wants to help sick people. She becomes a doctor. She's driven by this wish. She perfects herself. She becomes her doctor and she puts a little sign outside her door, you know. Now she only wants people to help people. So how else will she help us if we don't ask her? She doesn't walk down the street saying, "Oh, there's a sick person. I better drag them to my surgery and help them." No, they'll put her in prison. You've got to ask because it's interdependent. She's totally qualified. A Buddha is totally qualified to help anybody who asks. But the cause of me being helped is asking Susan. So that's the way we relate to the Buddha. That's very powerful because the Buddhas are there. The Buddhas are amazing. I mean, if we have confidence in the presence of enlightened mind, and that sometimes is difficult for us, then these beings are only wanting to help. They manifest, already they're manifesting in countless bodies throughout universes to help sentient beings. It's their job. So our role is wanting. But I think sometimes in the West, we feel kind of embarrassed to ask for something. We think it's greedy, you know. But the more you want, I mean, if you want an ice cream, you don't just sit here thinking, "Oh, I shouldn't ask for an ice cream." I'm sorry, you won't get an ice cream. You better go down to the down shop and find the ice cream shop and open your mouth and say, "I want a chocolate ice cream, please." Then you'll get it. Asking is fundamentally important. So the more you want something, the more you'll get it. So everything exists on the tip of the wish, as Lama Zopa says. So you hear endless stories, Susan, of people who've got incredible confidence in the presence of Buddhas and the power of Buddhas, who request the Buddhas and pray to the Buddhas. It's exactly the same. I don't know if you were a Catholic. You weren't. I was a Catholic. In one sense, it's identical. The difference is God was my creator, but Buddha's not my creator. But it's the same logic. What is wrong with asking a person who knows how to do something? Susan is there to help me. The more I ask her and beg her to help me, the more she will help me. If I'm saying, well, maybe I'll go to see Susan or maybe she can help me, nothing happens. I've got to want it. I've got to request it. I've got to have confidence in Susan, and then the whole thing works. It's like that with the Buddhas, you know. That takes time for us, I think, in our culture. It really does. We're a bit cynical about it. We don't believe it, you know. So it means we've got to know what a Buddha is, and is it real? What does it mean? Then we can have some confidence. So Susan, if you have that, then whichever Buddhas you have confidence in, you know, you absolutely say the mantras, do the practices, ask other people to do, you know, absolutely, darling, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Go for it.
Thank you.
Good. What else, you people? Ask me some questions.
Venerable, there's a question about the 21 taras. It's a little vague. I don't know whether I should embellish it or not. I probably shouldn't.
Tell me what's there. Just read the words.
Would you ask Venerable to say something about the 21 taras?
That's not vague. That's totally precise. That's the clearest question I can hear. Thank you, Paula. I can't say much at all. I'm so sorry. I'll have to look it up. I mean, I've got this wonderful document here. Let's have a look for it. There's a lovely document that tells us all about the 21 taras. And I haven't studied it, but let me see if I can find it. We can even go through it, perhaps. 21 taras. 21 taras. I've got it in my praises to the 21 taras. It's something I cannot tell you, but except to say that they are they're different. They're like Tara in the sense that they're a manifestation of different qualities. Some are different colors, some represent different qualities, some are peaceful, some are wrathful. They're just 21 variations of this energy is all I can say, you know. All I can say is that. And I know there is a text here and I'll look for it. And if you're going to be around the weekend, I'll try and find it. I'll read a little bit from it. It's a very nice commentary. I'll find it for you. I haven't studied it, but they're basically all different qualities. There are some taras who are very peaceful, some are very wrathful, some are very powerful, you know. So they're different ones, and they've got their own mantra probably. That's the best I can say. I'm so sorry. I can't say more now, but I'll look up this little document for you, and I'll have it in the weekend. Who else is there?
Venerable Robina, how are you?
Yes,
it's
I'm very
John
well.
Kavanagh. So good to see you.
Oh, good. Yeah, talk to me.
Yeah, I saw you last in Vermont. That's where I always see you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In Milarepa, yeah.
Yeah.
A couple things. I've been doing a Tara practice for many years, and also a Vajrasattva practice at your advice for a lot of years. My visualizations are always, it seems like the more I try to really visualize, that loses me. Occasionally I get a strong visualization. But as far as my faith in the practice, despite that, it's gone up remarkably. And I will also let you know that I don't know if you recall, but I deal with inmates all the time.
Yes, John.
And have found that just doing silent mantra when clients are behind the bars, literally losing their minds, just sit down, do Tara, and listen. It calms them down. Like
that's incredible to know, John.
It's magical. It's magical.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So how much it doesn't take much sometimes to help somebody, right? It's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's really interesting to know. No explanation. You just say the mantra.
Yeah. But again, in my Tara practice, my Vajrasattva practice, chin raising practice, I sense much more the presence and energy, even heat, color. But the minute I want to start drawing the picture,
I know. I think that's not.
I feel like I'm stepping away.
I know. Yeah. That's not uncommon, but it doesn't matter. I think is that what the mind having confidence is the really powerful part. Some people can have very good visualization, and in fact, they get very much attached to the visualization, but don't have much sense of feel presence, don't have much sense of the Buddhas. So it's really it's your mind having confidence that is the most important one. And of course, as we get concentration, if we get concentration, then we can start to visualize. But some people have it naturally, some people don't. That's okay. It doesn't matter. Your mind having confidence is the main thing, John.
Okay. Well, it's so wonderful to see you.
Good. Yes. Happy to see you. Thank you, John, so much. Thank you. What else, everybody? It's good to have questions. It opens it all up to know exactly what you want to know. No, nothing. Okay. So this one of seeing some people have a natural feeling for some of the Buddhas, like there's John talking, about Tara. But it really does become powerful. It's a bit like you watch generic tennis. You can be inspired by it, but if you don't put a face on that tennis player, if you look at tennis on the television without ever looking at the person's face, you just see tennis players. You don't see people because the camera is so far away. It's a bit like that. You can learn so much, but as you think about it, as soon as you put a face on it, as soon as you watch Federer play tennis or Serena, then it really becomes real for you. And that's what Lama Yeshe said. He said, the Buddha is not here. The Buddha is dead. But the Four Noble Truths only become real for you when you get it from the human being that you have decided is like your Serena, your Buddha, It makes it just more real, more personal. As soon as you then visualize Tara, it's in your mind, it's this green lady. But if your Lama, let's say, is His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you just feel it's the mind of the Dalai Lama manifesting as Tara for you, and it feels the same. That's where the power is. Like, in other words, you watch 17 tennis players, but you watch Serena, it has so much more power because she's yours. This is so logical in a way. This is the meaning of the Guru. Of course, we really fantasize that meaning. It just makes so much sense. It makes it personal. We need a personal connection, We need the personal connections. It is what drives us, gives us courage. And then we want to become like that. You want to become Serena, It's very powerful. So maybe yes.
Hi, my name is Sheil.
Hello, Sheil. Happy to see you.
Happy to see you. I see you through YouTube, and finally I get to see you here.
Oh, good. I'm very pleased. Well done. I'm glad you came. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I always get confused with like understanding the deities in like the Vajrayana path, like Tara and Chenrezig. Like, I used to live in Bhutan, and this is where my exposure to these deities came. But it confuses me because I don't know, like like when you say medicine Buddha practice or Tara practice, I just kind of made a little connection just now when you said to make it personal. Like you think of the Dalai Lama.
Yes.
But I got lost. Like, do I think of the Dalai Lama being Tara? Like, I think
yes, right there. Exactly. See, go back to that little example I used before. Try and imagine you want to learn tennis. So you look up a book about tennis players or tennis coaches. Okay, you'd go straight to the coach, I know, but think of it this way. This is what I'm trying to show the pictures of Tara, the picture of Chenrezig, the statue of medicine Buddha. It's just this, you can't, like I said to you before, we think, well, if you look at Shakyamuni Buddha, we know he lived in India 2.5 years. We see a face. We know, I mean, everybody depicts his face differently, but we all know he refers to that person. But if you look at Tara, you think, well, I wonder who she was. Where did she live? Is she Australian? Is she Indian? Is she American? But it's not like that. So what I'm trying to get at is it's a generic image. And so think of it, the analogy of tennis. It's a generic image of a perfect tennis player, but it hasn't got a personality. It hasn't got an identity on it. So you have to find your coach and you put Serena's face on it. So that's what I'm saying. So when you visualize, if Dalai Lama is your Lama, or whoever your teacher is, your guru, you visualize it's their mind dressing up as Tara for your benefit. So the guru is Tara and Tara is the guru. And because you have a close connection with that guru, let's say you do have, then that becomes more real for you, not just some abstract green lady. That's the point. Are you seeing my point?
Yes. Now, do we have, like, I don't have like someone like the Dalai Lama, but like, for those of us that don't have a connection to a guru, what do we do? Do we just...
Is there anybody you like at all? Do you have confidence in the Dalai Lama, for example?
Yes.
Well, put him there then. Good enough. Or honey, you think if I've got a connection with this path, then I must have a connection with gurus, and I haven't met them yet. So imagine that they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs, waiting for you to recognize them. So you think that they are manifesting as Tara, but you just haven't recognized who the guru is yet. And one day you'll meet them, and then it'll become the same.
And so when that, do we have to ask permission?
From whom?
From the guru, like say
No, wait a minute, to do what? Permission for what?
To be my guru, to visualize.
Yeah, I mean, of course, if you want a doctor, you've got to go ask that doctor to be your doctor, don't you? You don't just wait for them to come to you. Absolutely. You've got to look around. You've got to check out the tennis coaches. Use that analogy consciously because it brings it down to earth. If you want to play tennis, you've got to look for tennis coaches. You don't just sit back and wait for them to come to you. You've got every day think, I want to play tennis. So you check the tennis players, you go to the classes, you go to look at, you watch how they are, you watch them with the students, you watch how they teach, and then eventually you connect with one. You've done your research, you've got confidence, you've checked their students, you've checked them, and then you ask them, please, can I learn tennis from you? It's exactly the same, darling.
So right now I have nobody, but as you're teaching us the Tara practice, do I in my mind, like say I chose the Dalai Lama, do I in my mind ask the Dalai Lama for permission to be my guru because we haven't met yet and I can't get to where he's at? Like,
if you have decided that he is your guru, then of course you would do that. And then you would visual and you'd think of him like that way, and you'd imagine him as being Tara. And then when you do the Chenrezig practice, you imagine him being Chenrezig. And when you do the medicine Buddha practice, you imagine him being medicine Buddha. It makes it more personal for you, sweetheart.
Thank you, Venerable.
Makes sense?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. But you're the boss. You choose, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Good one. Thank you, darling. What else, people? Anything else? Why don't we do a little practice? It's really, I just do a very simple version of it, which is just the same as we did other Buddhas as well. But we'll do this with Tara. We'll do it a little bit. I'll lead a little meditation. How about that? Okay, people? And then we might have some more questions. Have we got 2 hours or 90 minutes tonight, Paula?
2 hours, Venerable. And I do have all the prayers and materials for this class. I'm just not fast.
Okay, no to worry. We don't need prayers or anything. We don't need anything. Don't worry about it. But everybody's got their course notes, have they? You've put the course notes out for people, have you?
They're on the link.
Notes. But people know that.
I hope so. They're on our website. You can, open another browser window and very quickly get them from there.
If people haven't been told there are course notes, you don't send them to their email address. You tell them that they're there.
They're emailed. They got emailed. Yeah, they did a great job. Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm very happy. Who was that? Who spoke?
Yeah.
Or somebody.
It's John again.
Okay, good. I'm very happy. Good. Glad.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so listen, let's just do then a little meditation using Tara. Okay. So we try and remember, the point of this is not something esoteric, it's not something mystical because you're visualizing a Buddha. We visualize all day. Like John said, sometimes visualization is not so good. But we know very well if you're in love with somebody or if you're angry with somebody, I swear to you, we have perfect concentration and we have perfect visualization. We really do know. It just means your mind imagining something. We spend our lives with attachment imagining things. We do this all the time. We just don't call it visualization, you know. So here we're using visualization, imagining the Buddha, and remembering that every thought counts, every thought sows a seed, every thought programs us. So it's a marvelous thing to be doing just for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, however long it takes, imagining the Buddha, imagining all the blessings coming, saying the mantra, blessing our speech with it, and imagining becoming Tara. You know, wow, how else can it, how could it not help you? You know? So we just imagine Tara out there in the sky. She's all these visualizations, they're from Tantra, as I said. The Shakyamuni, the form of the Buddha is the one in the Sutra teachings. But this is basically the Mahayana, and it's the Vajrayana, essentially. So this is a different aspect of the Buddha. And psychologically, it's got a different approach as well. You know, this aspect of the Buddha, as we see behind us, is completely manifestation of subdued body, speech, and mind. But here, these deities in Tantra, and we haven't gone much into the psychology of Tantra, but we'll certainly talk about it in the weekend. It's a whole different approach. It's trying to energize us, to lift us, to make us blissful, to make us joyful. And at the more sophisticated level, it's actually utilizing all these different states of mind on our path to enlightenment, including the delusions, you know. So meanwhile, and they're all in this aspect of youth, they say, looking totally gorgeous. And again, like I said, it's a visual language. Everything in these visualizations is like playing a role in helping us understand Tara. I mean, I can't tell you what everything means. I'm not educated enough. But we just imagine in the sky, about eye level, this radiant light body. She's got green light, which is like action energy. She's female. And many of them don't have many clothes on. You know, they're just totally gorgeous. She's got these gorgeous breasts. And she's got silken colored clothes on the lower part of her body, like rainbow colored silken clothes. You see it in the pictures. Her left leg is drawn in like as if she's sitting cross-legged on a multicolored lotus. And on that lotus, you don't see it, but as a moon disc and a sun disc, and they're like two flat cushions. And they represent wisdom and compassion. So her left leg is drawn in like she's sitting cross-legged, okay, on this multicolored lotus, on the sun disc and the moon disc. And her right leg, though, she's in like a relaxed pose. You know, if you ever see pictures of Kuan Yin, who's sitting in this relaxed position. So this is Tara. She's sitting with her right leg sort of resting lightly, not crossed, and it's resting on another little multicolored lotus. Very glorious, you know. And this is showing that she's in the action pose. She's not in the meditative pose. This is showing that she's ready to hop up to help others. She's action energy. So the legs are like a multicolored silk, as I said, you know. Now her face, let's go to her face now, is radiantly beautiful, just totally gorgeous, you know. Totally beautiful. Everything's made of light. Her eyes, sometimes, as I said, they're slightly wide open. She's slightly wrathful, showing her power. And she's looking, and if you have a spiritual teacher, if you have a mentor, if you have a lama, a guru, it just means a mentor, a person you connect to, whom you've checked up on, whom you feel close to, who inspires you, who touches your heart. You visualize it is their mind manifesting as Tara. This is your Tara, like your Serena. You put their face or their energy on Tara. So Tara is your teacher and your teacher is Tara. Think like that. It makes it so personal. And she's this blissful face, beautiful eyes looking at you with such incredible love and compassion. Well, I don't think, when we read the teachings about love and compassion of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, we are too cynical. We don't believe it's possible. We can't imagine there can be such people. But this is what's possible, you know. So try and imagine this totally enlightened being, infinite wisdom, infinite clarity, infinite love, infinite compassion. There are no delusions left, you know, finished. There's only the virtue, only the compassion, only the wish to help you, manifesting directly for your sake, looking at you with such love and affection. And she, as you see it in the statues and the pictures, she's in this bodhisattva style. It's kind of based on the Indian royal style. The Tibetans have their own depictions these days, but it's still based on the ancient Indian style. So her hair is partially held up in a top knot. Imagine this. And the rest you imagine down her back. And everything is crystal clear. Everything's made of light. And her, as I said, her top half of her body, she's green. It's got these beautiful breasts and these shawls you can see sometimes, different pictures, different statues around her shoulders. And she's got her right hand on her right knee, and the fingers are pointing up. And it's in this mudra or gesture, like a generous. She's giving. The fingers are pointed out, and the palm is up. And she's holding between her ring finger and thumb, on her right hand, the stem of a blue upala flower, a blue lotus. And this flower blooms at her right ear. Just imagine it. Like John, if you can't visualize well, it doesn't matter. Just imagine it. On her right hand. Then her left hand. Oh no, wrong way. Wait a minute. Her right hand. That's her right hand. Her right hand holding. And her left hand is at her heart. Fingers pointing up in the mudra of enlightenment, I think it's called. I always forget. And she's holding in between her ring finger and the thumb another blue upala flower, which blooms at her left ear. Then she's got these, like in all these statues, you see it decorated beautifully. Her ears, her throat, upper arms, her wrists, her ankles. And everything's radiant, beautiful, light. Lift your heart, made of light, nothing substantial. And she's got this 5-pointed crown, a bit like a tiara, on the front of her head. And every tiny one of these things is, like, as I said, has a meaning. I can't tell you all the meanings. I'm sorry. But you visualize, imagine. So now you imagine at her brow, there's a white Om, Sanskrit letter, but just imagine the Roman letters OM, representing purified body. At her throat is a red R, AH, purified speech. At her heart, in the center of her chest, a blue Hung, purified mind. Okay? So there she is sitting with her right leg out on the little multicolored lotus and her left leg in the sort of striped kind of silken clothing on the lower part of her body. Her right hand holding an upala flower that blooms at her right ear, and the right hand's on her knee, her fingers pointing out. Her left hand at her heart, fingers pointing up, holding the stem of another blue upala flower blooming at her left ear. This 5-pointed crown on her head, hair partially held up in a top knot, the rest of the hair down her back, you imagine it. Blissful eyes, radiant, compassionate, powerful. Sweet red mouth, full of compassion, the embodiment of infinite action energy, but oneness with compassion, oneness with wisdom, the wish, the compassion to benefit you, the wisdom to know how, and the power to do so. The 3 essential qualities of a Buddha. So now you imagine, this is our visualization. We've set up our visualization, okay? So now we visualize that from her heart, blue light goes out. Beams of blue light go out to all the directions of the universe. north, south, east, west, northeast, northwest, etc., and up and down. They talk about the 10 directions. Light goes out, and what it does is hook the energy of all the trillions of Buddhas who become Tara. Countless beings have become these Buddhas. People become Buddha by practicing Chenrezig, practicing Tara, practicing Medicine Buddha, practicing all the Buddhas. You become that Buddha. So all these Buddhas in these subtle light bodies in all the universe, it hooks their energy. And all this energy, this blue light, comes back with their energy of all the Buddhas, all the Taras in the universe, and comes back and absorbs into the hung at her heart and fills her completely. And now she's oneness with all the Taras of the universe. Zahung Bam Ho. So now we imagine with such compassion, only wanting to benefit us. You visualize she sends from her brow, from the white Om at her brow, radiant laser beams of light, pouring into every one of us, penetrating our brow and totally filling us. And instantly purifying our sickness, the heaviness of our body, the problems of our body, the aches, the pains, the difficulties, the suffering. Totally. But not only that, this white light also, imagine, purifies all the negative karma, all the karmic imprints left from all the negative karma that we've ever done with our bodies to harm others since beginningless time. This powerful white light fills us and purifies all the imprints of all the harm we've ever done with all our countless bodies since beginningless time. How amazing. Full of this radiant white light. Imagine this. And now she so compassionately sends red light, radiant beams of laser red light from the red R at her throat that penetrate our throat and instantly fill us, purifying all the nonsense of our speech, our inability to express ourselves properly, all our foolish speech, inappropriate speech, angry speech, harsh speech, lies, speculating, rabbiting on about nothing, bad mouthing behind backs, all this nonsense we do with our speech. And all the suffering caused by this, which is people not believing our words, people not valuing our words, people thinking we're being harsh when we're not. All this is the karmic result of inappropriate speech, All of this purified. And the imprints left in our mind from all the harm we've ever done to sentient beings with our speech since beginningless time. Totally full of this blissful, blissful red light, totally purifying, not one atom left. And then now Lama Tara so compassionately sends this time radiant laser beams of blue light from the blue hung at her heart, penetrating our heart and filling us completely. And this time purifying all the nonsense of our mind, all our low self-esteem, our depression, our anxiety, our anger, our hurt, our pain, our jealousy, all the pain of this nonsense mind of ours that doesn't have an intrinsic nature but is so dominant sometimes. And all, of course, the ego grasping, the root delusion that clings to this solid, concrete, limited sense of self. All of this instantly purified, full of this radiant blue light. So now Lama Chenrezig this time again sends, you imagine, from her brow the white light beams from the white Om, and this time fills us completely and fills us with our potential. So what is our potential? First of all, imagine just this body alone. Imagine being full of the potential such that whoever sees us, hears us, talks to us, smells us, tastes us, touches us, that they can only be benefited. Can you imagine this? Full of this infinite power to only benefit others. But not only that, imagine that we're full of the infinite power of when we become a Buddha, and we're capable of manifesting our mind in billions of forms throughout universes to be of benefit to sentient beings. Full of this incredible potential to only be of benefit to others. This radiant white light filling us. Not possible to harm with our bodies. And then Lama Chenrezig, this time again, so kindly, compassionately sending the red light from her throat that enters our throat, and this time filling us, can you imagine now, this is the main one, with the power of speech. This is the Buddha's greatest gift. We can see a million Buddhas manifesting, looking radiant and handsome, looking at us every day. What good is that until they open their mouths? Speech is the most powerful thing. So can you imagine now that our speech is totally purified, totally perfected, and every sound we utter, even our laugh, can only benefit those who hear us. Can we imagine this? Not possible to harm, but could only benefit. Every word we say, every sound that comes out of our mouths, full of this incredible power, the power of speech, this radiant red light filling us. And now Lama Chenrezig, this time from her heart, radiant blue beams that fill us, and with what else but all of our virtues and all our wisdom. This is who we really are. This is our true nature. Right now it's covered, by all our neuroses and delusions that loom large in our mind. We give them so much more power than they have. But now they're gone, imagine only wisdom that sees things as they are, therefore only joy. Therefore, only compassion, only kindness, only love, only compassion. These are our true nature. This is kind of tasty. There's logic to this. We have to understand it. Full of this bliss and bliss. When we are even relatively in touch with virtue and wisdom, our mind is naturally happy. So when we are Buddha mind, we are blissful naturally. This is our true nature. Imagine this radiant blue light filling us, this marvelous potential. So now, more to do. We've now achieved liberation. You imagine that, but we can do more. We have to remove even the subtlest imprints in the mind. They call them the obstacles to omniscience. And this happens when we combine bodhicitta with wisdom. So now we've accomplished that. We've now become a Buddha. So now you imagine Lama Tara so compassionately sends these three lights simultaneously. White from the white Om at her brow, red from the red Ah at her throat, and blue from the Hum at her heart. These three come together, filling us completely and removing even the subtlest imprints of all the nonsense. And now we become ourselves. We become Tara. Imagine this. Imagine this. So now imagine that the lotus that Lama Tara is sitting on, and the little lotus that her right leg is resting on, her right foot, they dissolve up into her body. Imagine. And then she comes very happily to sit above your crown, facing the same way as you. Just imagine. And now you imagine she's delighted and wants to become merged with your body, speech, and mind. So if you've received empowerment, then you can dissolve and do the three kayas. If you haven't, then you visualize that Lama Tara dissolves into you through your crown, and you imagine that the Tara's body, speech, and mind, and your Lama's body, speech, and mind, and your body, speech, and mind completely merge, becoming one. As Lama Yeshe would say, union, oneness. Just imagine this. And if you've received empowerment, you do the space-like emptiness meditation. Otherwise, you just imagine that you kind of expand to fill the universe. Just imagine, totally clear, totally vast, totally blissful. No thoughts. For a couple of moments, no thoughts. Vast, spacious, radiant, blissful. And now we think, well, we're the Buddha now. I've achieved Buddhahood. And what drove me to do this, my countless lifetimes, is compassion, to help others. So now that I'm qualified, what choice do I have? I must help others. So now we imagine all sentient beings in the form of humans, which is the form they can get enlightened in, all the beings of all the realms, trillions of them, and we think of all of them, we visualize all of them in the form of friends, enemies, and strangers. So right in front of you, imagine if you have any enemies these days, people you don't like, who irritate you, annoy you, upset you, who've really seriously harmed you, right in front. Objects of your aversion. And then to the left in front of you, the objects of your attachment, your beloveds. If you have any of them these days, your beloveds, the objects of your attachment. To the left in front of you. So now to the right and everywhere else. The strangers, which is 99.99% of the universe, isn't it? And who are they? Objects of indifference. So attachment to those who are kind to us and who adore us, aversion for those who've harmed us, and indifference towards those who've done neither. And that's the vast majority of the universe, isn't it? Strangers. So to the right and then in front of you as far as the horizon goes. To the right, to the left, behind you, above you, below you. The whole of the universe full of all these other sentient beings, all in the form of humans. Imagine. So now think, they all want to be happy, just the same as each other and exactly the same as me. They do not want to suffer. Absolutely the same as each other, absolutely the same as me. There's no question. So now that I'm Tara, what else to do but to help them? No choice. So now we send from our hearts, we send trillions and trillions of tiny little green Taras emanating from our heart, entering into all the enemies first, imagining them being free of suffering and the causes of their suffering. And then full of happiness, give them everything they need. The same with the beloveds. Free them from suffering, give them everything they need. That's practicing love and compassion. And then all the strangers, everyone, the trillions of Taras going into their hearts, taking away all their pain, all their suffering, and all the causes of their suffering. Every one of them, in front, below, behind. Trillions and trillions of Taras going out from our heart, entering to everyone, taking away their suffering and its causes, giving them everything they need, giving them happiness. And then imagining also they all become Tara. They all turn into Tara. They all achieve their own Buddhahood. And as we continue this, just for a minute or so, we can sing Tara's mantra. And we visualize as the sound goes out, that it rains down onto all these countless trillions of beings, blessing them even more. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Swaha. 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 And now imagine, to finish, they all dissolve into us. Imagine that from the trillions of taras throughout the universe, they all dissolve into us, enhancing even more brilliantly our tara nature. Just imagine. And then relax. That'll do. So that's your mind. Every single second of that was our mind wanting something, imagining something, visualizing something, and none of it goes astray. We should be so blissed out just thinking these wonderful thoughts, you know. That's the power of it. It's not fantasy. That programs our mind with exactly this. That's thoughts, you know. So be very happy. I think we should end there. I have to cheat you of 20 minutes, but I think it's enough. Come on, you people. As you have I think you should just finish with that taste. What do you think? What do you think, Paula? Unmute, sweetheart.
I'm just not fast enough with the controls. That's what it is.
Don't worry. So unless it's urgent questions, I've got a feeling we should end with that. I don't know. What do you think? Good enough, I think. And we'll finish with the 4 immeasurable thoughts, these amazing aspirations of the Bodhisattva. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could abide in equanimity, free of attachment, ignorance, and anger. May they abide so. Now this next one, this is the attitude of this is the brave attitude of the Bodhisattva. I will make this happen. That's the courage of the Bodhisattva. Please, Lama Tara, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could be free of suffering and its causes. May they be free. I will make this happen. Please, Lama Tara, bless me to be able to do this. Give me courage to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could have happiness. And as Lama Zopa says, it's not an ordinary happiness, it's the happiness of enlightenment. Imagine that. And its causes. May they have them. I will make this happen. Please, Lama Tara, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never parted from higher rebirths and liberation's excellent bliss. May they never be parted. I will make this happen. Please, Lama Tara, bless me to be able to do this. And then think for the rest of the day, whether it's the middle of the night or the morning for you, for the rest of the day, think like the Bodhisattvas, that our body and speech is for others, you know, it's for others. So whatever we say and do will be a benefit to others, and our mind, which is ours, watch it like a hawk. And that makes every second of day practice for ourselves and others. All right, sweethearts, goodbye. Jangchub, Semchub, Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam Ke Yuchi Ke Panyam Pa Me Payang, Gong Ne Gong Du Pabasho, Gewa Din Yudu Dag, Lama Sange Drubyo Ne, Drowa Chikyang Marupa, De Sala Gurpa Shok. Thank you, sweethearts, every single person. Thank you, dearest ones, all of you. Never give up, okay? Much, 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 much love.